What is up, everybody? I am Get Flanked, and I am here with the new CEO of Darkzero, Don Kim. We're going to sit down today. We're going to go through some questions. We're going to get to know Don a little bit more, okay? And I'm excited to do this. So first of all, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me. We're here in the Darkzero compound. It's always nice to be here. And I can't wait to get to know you a little bit. I got some good questions here. I'm going to put you under the spotlight a little bit. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So first of all, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey through esports? How did you get to this position?
Yeah, so I've been a gamer my whole life, right? The first memories that I have as a kid was like my older brother, like playing Super Nintendo, and I would sort of watch him, and the whole thing where the older brother doesn't actually let the younger brother play and have like a not plugged a controller. That was definitely me. Start off on sort of those consoles, and then played like Game Boy with like Pokemon and all those stuff, and then eventually I moved over to Boston, and sort of the friends I met there introduced me to stuff like Neopets and RuneScape, and that's really where I started to like really be into sort of the gaming scene. And as I grew older, played pretty addictively. Like I have over 2 years of gameplay time on RuneScape, for example.
Wow.
Got to college, was still playing different things. Like I started to get into League of Legends, and that's really where like I learned what esports was. League of Legends, I think it was like season 3 was my freshman year, and I started to watch the different teams there, like TSM, CLG, and all the things that were happening back then. And it sort of I really just fell in love with it, right? And I think when I graduated from college, I was trying to make a decision between, did I want to go into like finance and consulting, like a lot of my, classmates were, or did I want to like pursue something that I was really passionate about? And I sort of decided to make the leap and sort of apply for gaming companies, apply for esports teams, and sort of see how that went. Ended up getting a job at a small mobile gaming startup in San Francisco. Worked there for about 2 years, doing a bunch of different stuff like sales, partnerships, game design, analytics. I think I realized in that 2 years that what I really cared about was not necessarily sort of like the gaming side of it, but more definitely like the team and esports side. So I began to look around, and I got super lucky and applied to Blitz, which is actually the tech side of TSM. So a lot of people don't know that TSM was actually founded by Andy as like a bunch of websites, and it's something that he's always been very passionate about. So they ended up acquiring a product called Blitz, which is like this analytics tool. And I was lucky enough to get the role where I was basically running their product and operations. At the same time that I got there, the timing was super lucky, where Dan was sort of switching away from being CEO to wanting to be more of like a business development guy. And I was able to sort of jump into helping with operations and HR for the company as a whole instead of just Blitz. So I ended up doing that, and then moving over to the esports side, working with Lena and working with Andy. And then I took over sort of the entire esports division at TSM, did that for most of 2021 up until the point where Zach contacted me about this role. And really, it just felt like the perfect opportunity for me to sort of take everything that I had learned up to that point and transition it to a point where I could really move Darkzero in the right direction to really start to grow the company.
Were you nervous about coming out of college and like following your passion into esports instead of maybe going a more traditional route?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely was very unsure about if it was going to be the right thing for me. I think, you definitely see the dollar signs of like what all, my friends were doing. They're going into these big jobs where they're making so much money, or then I take this job where I'm making like maybe a third of the amount that these guys are. And especially being in San Francisco, where, it's a super expensive city, and I'm making so much less money, it's, hard to keep up, and you look to them and say, wow, like maybe I should be doing that. But I knew that I was in the right space generally, because I loved what I was doing on a day-to-day. I loved being in like the space, and the money was just secondary at that point.
Well, enough with the softball questions. We got to get down to the really important stuff here. Okay, so I'm gonna throw some questions at you. Want to really get to know who you are. What are your top 3 movies of all time? Doesn't have to be in order. You can just say top 3. You don't have to go 1, 2, 3 if that makes it easier.
That's a good question. I would say don't know that I have a top 3, but a couple movies that sort of just come to mind. Like right now, I'm really into like the Marvel series. So just as a franchise, I love the Marvel movies. I think right now I just finished watching Ragnarok, so that's sort of where I am. I like to watch them sequentially. Outside of that, I'm a big fan of like Forrest Gump or like Good Will Hunting. I actually went to the same high school that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck went to.
Wow.
So I have sort of like that little bit of connection to those guys, and I sort of love like all those Boston movies because of that.
It's a pretty good list.
Yeah.
Top 3 video games of all time.
I mean, I already mentioned, RuneScape is sort of like the one that I always go back to, the one that like ruins my life.
Sure.
I think MMOs are the things that they really suck your time. So, like I said, over 2 years gameplay there. Another one that I had a lot of time on, I loved playing growing up, was Warcraft 3. Like the custom maps, like that's when like I was playing like Dota back then, and like this game called Island Defense and Vampirism, these sort of custom games that I used to love. And then I would say in the new era, my favorite one is probably Apex.
Okay. So have you touched New World at all? A lot of people say that New World is upgraded RuneScape. So.
I have not. I think I try to stay away from MMOs.
Just because you know that they're going to put,
I only have so much time.
Right.
And I think those types of games would suck a little bit too much for me.
Yeah. Well, I think the game's been out now for a couple weeks, and I think I have 200 hours played in it. So I understand what you're saying there. What made you want to be a part of Darkzero?
I think Darkzero, even before I joined, I think Darkzero has had such an incredible reputation in the industry. Obviously, Zach and the whole team and what everyone's been doing here until I came, has resonated well with the fan base. And I think everyone who I talk to about Darkzero knows that Darkzero is super well known for like treating players really well, doing things to like the utmost capabilities, right? Like very, very top tier. Even though Darkzero is much smaller than like a tier 1 organization, I think the way that it's been run is very much in the style of like doing things almost better than a lot of these top organizations. Giving players full-time employment, right? That's something that no teams really do unless they have to, because the league says they have to. Which means that the players get like healthcare benefits, all of these things that I think are really important to see. Offering things like wealth management services to both staff and to players, something that I think is you see in both traditional sports and esports nowadays, where a lot of players don't necessarily know how to manage their money. And then investing in big facilities, right, where making sure that that staff and players have great places to work from and have are cared after, right. I think these things are great foundation blocks that make Darkzero a really great organization. It's definitely something that I want to build on.
Is that intimidating to come into as CEO? Like, I can imagine myself in a situation where if you're coming somewhere where like, hey, maybe this org has potential, but there's so many things I can see that I need to fix right now. Whereas if you're coming into an org that you said, is already established as having a good reputation, is it a little bit more intimidating to like, hey, I don't want to mess this up?
It actually is almost a relief because it feels like it's already been built in a way that makes it really easy for me to step in and just sort of keep moving forward. But at the same time, given the pace at which Darkzero has grown, I think the team was very methodical about what Darkzero was up to this point, right? Like mostly focusing on Siege since its inception, really just barely getting into Valorant just this year. And I think because the foundation is so strong, it makes it really easy for me to focus on things like growth and new game acquisitions, and those are things that I feel very comfortable with because I did so much of it at TSM. So it's something that I feel like it's almost, I wouldn't say easy, but it feels very comfortable.
How would you summarize Darkzero as an org right now?
It's an org that cares about running itself in a way that's really focused on treatment of players and being sort of better than all of the other teams in that regard, right? Making sure that we're not doing things like, anything shady where a player feels like they're locked into their contract or doing something where someone will leave the company with a bad taste in their mouth, right? Gotcha. And I think that's like a very core founding principle of the company, and that's definitely something that I think Darkzero is known for.
What's your number one priority as CEO of Darkzero?
My number one priority right now is definitely just sort of listening and learning. I've only been here for about a month, and I don't really want to just step in and make grand sweeping changes. I feel like, it takes a while to really get to know where things are, and I don't want to just say like, hey, here's the new direction right away. It's more, I think it's always better to sort of just sit back, learn, and sort of see where things are. And then once I feel like I really understand where everything is, then sort of lead things in a new direction.
I feel like esport orgs are wearing like a lot of different hats in today's world. There's obviously the competition aspect, there's apparel, there is content creation, there's a lot of different aspects now. How do you manage like having all of those different aspects of the esports org and then working towards success under one roof?
I don't think one is necessarily more important than the other. I think it really just depends on where every organization is in terms of the landscape and how those different pieces of the brand resonate with their audience, right? Like, for example, I think you look at a brand like FaZe where, they found pretty quickly that they were able to build a really massive influencer organization and really leaned in hard to that, right? 100 Thieves, I think, sort of does a lot of stuff all over the place where like they had some really strong success with influencers, and then I think they dived into the esports side at the same time and found a lot of success there. I think you look at someone like TSM, who has been just super strong competitively and has leaned in super hard to make sure that they're always the number one in that regard, right? I think Darkzero kind of fits in that domain, right? Or there's a couple different things that I think Darkzero does really well. One is definitely, being at the very, very top of competition. I think the Siege team has always been a contender in the top 3 and has won many, of the regional titles. And I think one thing is that is particularly unique about Darkzero is really focusing on like artistic style. I don't think you see a lot of orgs that have giant murals up just inside the organization at all times, and really, really fantastic gun skins that focus on like characters and are really focused on sort of like that sort of artistic aspects that make it so that the audience is super interested in those products.
Where do you see Darkzero in 1, 5, and 10 years?
I think in the next year, I'd really love to see us expand into a couple more titles and take where we've been and just bring that same brand to those titles, right? So in the same way that we're hyper competitive in Siege, I want to see us be that way in Valorant, be that way in the other new titles that we're looking at, like Apex and Rocket League and whatever else that we might be interested in. And then just make sure that we can consistently do the same thing we've done in Siege, where we've built a really, really strong core community there, and transfer that same ability over to these new games that we're working on. I think just generally, I would love in 5 years to see Darkzero, at the top of the game, right? Where we are participating in all of the tier 1 esports. We have a large number of content creators that, work together to sort of push the brand, and just sort of be at the forefront of entertainment. I think that while we are very focused on sort of the esports side of things right now, I think that esports teams are at the end of the day also entertainment brands, and to be at the forefront of entertainment and culture is, I think, the direction that I would want to take things.
If there's one thing that you can look back at, say in 5 years or whatever, and say, I did my job as a CEO, what is that one thing going to be? Like, what's the one thing that you can look at and say, if this happens, I will have done a good job as CEO of Darkzero?
I think that if the people that work here and the players that we have and the fans are happy with how things have been, regardless of our financial success. I mean, obviously financial success is great, but you can never guarantee that in esports, I would say right now. If I feel like that, and again, especially because the tenets of how the company was started was around, making sure that we're doing things better than other organizations in terms of making sure we take care of our people, and we feel like we have lived up to that expectation, then I think I'll be happy.
What would you say to the hardcore Dark Zero fans that have been with us for a while, that are seeing this transitional period and wondering where Dark Zero is going?
I would say to the fans that, not too much is really changing, right? Like, it's really just taking what we have, the core pieces, and continuing on them and making them stronger and better than ever, right? So, I hope that our core fans in Siege will love to see the exact same things that we do there in other games that they might play, like I mentioned, like Apex, like Valorant, like Rocket League, like Halo, whatever it is that we end up in, and keep cheering for us in all those different games.
All right, well, you heard it from the Darkzero CEO, Don Kim. Hopefully this gives you guys a little bit more perspective into him, get to know him a little bit more. I'm excited to work with him. It's an honor, and I'm really looking forward to the future of Darkzero. So if y'all enjoyed this, make sure you put any questions you have down in the comments. That I'm sure that we'll be looking through those. And with that said, we're going to sign off here. Thanks a lot for your time, and look forward to the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great.